Boop, 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 boop. And good day there, cadre. This is your Sensei Al Bob, your griot. And you're coming to us on our channel, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. And I want to tell you that I am your griot Sensei Al Bob, and I'm here to always tell you a story. And this channel is for entertainment and edification. And you know what the Greek logos of education is, right? The word means to know. Oh. Hey, buddy.
Hey, Jose, how are you today?
I'm pretty good. I'm just staying out of the rain. Uh, Getting ready to do a live chat, and the name of it is "Are we the first, the only, or doomed human race?"
I like that.
Yep. Because seems to be a lot of evidence for all three. Because the universe is so old, and yet our species is so young. What does that mean? Our universe is so big, and there's over billions and billions of planets that are just like us. But how come nobody's visiting? And if they are, why aren't they? They're just like, it's like the people who I got the thousands of people who watch my channel but don't ever say anything.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like that. And doomed. I mean, we can't but do the most stupidest stuff as a species, and yet we're still here. We should have been toast long ago. So that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm bringing forth. What do you think about that?
I think it's a great idea, because survival of our species comes down to conduct. How do we treat each other? And are we good stewards of the world and each other? There's a lot of ignorance, a lot of apathy, and there's a lot of stupidity. You're absolutely right.
Yep. And the things that we seem to do best are violence, greed, and apathy.
Oh, sure. Well, people are talking about a war with Iran. How can anyone be so stupid?
Right. It's like, really? You want to do that? And yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to have your daughters drafted for work?
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah. No, it's going to be, but we have been at war in Afghanistan for almost 19 years. Meaning, if we were to go into war with Iran, your son would make it into that war.
When I was in Afghanistan in 2008, I was the dumbest, most dangerous, dirty thing I'd ever seen in my life.
Right.
Stupid. It's beyond. There was no point in being there. There was nothing you could do.
Well, the point there was, for Boeing to make a lot of money, to get the poppy fields back up and running, and to get that oil pipeline through.
Well, that's true. And here our kids have their arms and legs blown off.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. No, it's beyond stupid. It's criminal.
Yeah, it's criminal. Yeah, beyond stupid. It's criminal.
Yeah, it is. And really, what it was, this is hard currency. Drugs are hard currency.
Yeah, exactly. And the Taliban with the opium that has been there for thousands of years, and the only guys who ever shut it down was the Taliban.
Well, they shut it down. It was 1%.
Right.
I think over 90% of the world's opium comes from Afghanistan.
Right. But they shut it down for I don't know how many years, but for a small period of time. That's one of the reasons why the Taliban had nothing to do with 9/11.
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. No, it's very interesting. It's a hard crop. It's very hardy.
Yep.
You don't need refrigeration.
Right.
And also, a lot of it is destabilizing Iran, drug running across the border.
Right. And
asymmetrical warfare.
Right. Yeah. And the thing about Iran, they are run by the same guys that run ISIS. and that ran Iraq. I mean, that hidden hand motif, meaning the Ayatollah Khomeini stayed in Paris for 20 years while the Shah was in Tehran. And he was brought from Paris to Tehran by a U.S. Air Force C-130, and he was helped off the steps by Ollie North and General Secord, you know?
That's true.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we're in the Children's Museum. I'm chasing after my wife and my son. But now you're going to have a very good show, and it comes down to intent and how have we evolved, or like de-evolution,
Right.
Devo.
Right.
Okay? Those guys made a lot of fun about it, but it's true. We're de-evolving as a species. We're just getting dumbed down.
Yep.
Okay, like in China, everyone wants to be an astronaut. In America, everyone wants to be a YouTuber.
Right. Or you know, Condé Harris or movie star or something. Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. Why not?
Why not?
Why not? Yeah. But, basically it comes down to how are we presenting the future to our children? And we're just totally blind. We just don't. We're not doing what we're supposed to be doing.
No. But, the amazing thing about the human race is all of this, this ain't the first time we've done this. It's like, 100th time in the last 16,000 years, right? And every time we do this, there's a hidden kind of thing that goes down. And it's like Donald Trump is the president we needed, right? And so what we're, the dumbing down and all that is something that we needed so we could get some other kind of perspective.
That's true.
Look at you. If you hadn't been blown up in Afghanistan, you wouldn't be the lucky guy. You wouldn't have your son. You wouldn't have your wife. You wouldn't have any of that.
That's true. Basically just surviving that.
Yep. You'd be still in Bedford dealing with those chuckleheads there,
Oh, it's sad. You know about the chuckleheads.
Yep.
Bedford is the 10th town in Virginia.
Yep. And it's
Al, you're spot on. You're spot on.
Yep. Well, good to hear your voice, and that you're still hanging in there, and you're going to be going to a better place relatively soon, like weeks, right?
Well, we were in China in May. We're going to be visiting Hilton Head next month.
Yeah, but you're heading to your parents. You're heading to your parents in about a month, right?
Yeah, about a month. And I'm really happy to hear from you. I just wish I could really focus on your conversation.
Yeah,
right
well,
now.
go back to the kid. Yes, go back to the kid.
Always great to hear from you, Al.
Okay, my brother. You stay well, and remember, you're that lucky guy.
Okay, well, thank you for being the guru of wisdom, the sensei of wit on YouTube, my friend.
Okay, baby.
Okay. God bless you. Love you. Take care.
Okay.
Thanks.
So that's Rev. So that guy, he was stone cold, I don't want to say assassin, but he was a ranger, pretty well trained. Then he got blown up and they shipped him out. And then he came back as a padre, right? He joined the corps of religious folk in the army, right? And he went up in rank, and instead of staying in the back eating roast beef with the generals, he was out in the field, right? Let me plug in my microphone. There we go. There you go. Can you hear me better? Okay. So that was Rev, and as I was saying, he was a soldier boy, and he got blown up in Afghanistan, and he got blown up a lot, because he's a ranger. He was the tip of the spear, and he was one of the first people in country after 9/11. And he did that for 3 or 4 years, and he got blown up a lot. So he came out, and he went to theology school and became a minister and ran a church here in Virginia, nearby me. And then, he went back in the military as a chaplain. And he went in country and was out there with the guys without a gun, but being a chaplain. So, and he got in a lot of trouble for ministering morality and spirituality to the troops, making them feel better, right, for what they were doing. Not make them feel bad for what they were doing, but making them at least understand and what it was, and it wasn't their fault, and they're not evil baby killers. So, and then he got blown up again, and then they sent him to the worst hospital so he would die because he had changed so much that he went from being the super warrior to the super peacemaker, and they didn't like that, especially in uniform. And he should have been cashed out as a colonel, but they just kind of threw him to the side of the road, and that's where I met him, at the side of the road. And we were both really sick, and we both kind of got better and better, kind of helping each other in the library, and that library was a real godsend for a lot of people, because he was living in just a closet out in the woods, and he would have frozen to death if he had no real place to go to hang out and wash himself. And me too. I was I had no electricity, no running water, so I could make it down to the library and stay warm and get a little something to eat. And at least he ran a church, so there were a number of people who were helping him, and he was getting something from the his disability. Me, I hadn't quite hit it yet, meaning I had just come from being pretty well to do, and so I couldn't get any kind of help. I had to get rid of everything I owned to get any help, and that's kind of where I am now today. So anyway, we've stayed, and so he got better and better, and he had these two girls in Korea that he had been taking care of, that when he was, in Afghanistan, one of the places that was close enough where he spent the hospitals when he was a warrior was in Korea. And he met these two little girls in an orphanage, and he became their sponsor, and he was there until he learned Korean, and he, made that emotional connection so they wouldn't be traumatized. And so now they're like in college, they're still in Korea. He wanted to adopt them, but he then married a woman and had a child, and she's a social worker, and he's, trying to get what the Army owes him, so he can be cashed out as a colonel. And I mean, for years he says, "Oh, he's dead," he proved that he was still alive. And and that's the whole thing about, our species. We've hit, there are many boundary layers, like in the ocean. There are all these boundary layers in our atmosphere. There are many boundary layers that protect us and keep us, and so the troposphere, the megasphere, the Van Allen belt, and then they're all right. And one of the barriers of our species that we are stuck at, that we really hit the ceiling in 2012, is the barrier of violence, greed, and apathy, right? And right now, the greed part is violence, and greed and apathy are like, and that's why we have Donald Trump, because he is, the singular example of us. He is the canary in the coal mine right in front of us, right? And he's all about greed for himself. He's all about violence. That's how he represents, he has to fight back harder. You even say, blink an eye, that isn't a genuflection of, to his ego. He will attack you, want to kill you. He learned that from Roy Cohen, his lawyer, and that guy was, did you ever see the movie Boys in the Band? I think that was about, the beginning of the AIDS crisis, and it's a play in New York, and then they made it into a movie, and it was kind of told from Roy Cohen. And Roy Cohen was a guy who was a lawyer to Senator Joe McCarthy, who did the same kind of thing that, Senator Coughlin and Father Bilbo or one of the other back and forth during the, 1910s with the Jews and the Italians and the Irish and anybody else who wasn't white enough to be an American, but we wanted them here to be a slave because, the black folk under Jim Crow was this. I mean, nothing is new. This is exactly what America has been. Go read, Howard Zinn's American History. Go read this great book by a French economist called Capital in the 21st Century. And he's showing how, um, wealth is, not being created, it's being, given to the next generation of the wealthy. And that's really, a good example is Mr. Gates. He would have not been able to be Mr. Microsoft if his daddy hadn't been a corporate leader and had millions of dollars and knew all the right people to take advantage of and Bill Gates was no brilliant coder. His daddy was rich, and virtually every entity across the line is that. So, and Jamie, the thing with John, virtually, if I don't really, whenever I do a live chat at the thing, John comes down and jumps right into that, whatever that is. And why I do it is because, John jumps, it's like he jumps in the swimming pool of, violence, greed, and apathy, and John isn't a violent, greedy, apathetic person, but he's controlled by that ceiling, And the only way we can get through that ceiling is with love's co-creation. That's the only way we can get past this place. And it's amazing we're still here because Tabby Gathered, who's running for president in the Democratic Party, she had been in the Army for 16, 19 years. She was deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq. She's a major. She's been congressman for 2 seasons from Hawaii, and she's been on all of the committees. She knows what's going on. She's really smart. She really does have ideas to change things, whereas Donnie has no ideas. He's had almost 3 years to implement anything that's cohesive to a administrative plan. Zip. And all he does, he was hired to be a distraction. So the framework of our government can be totally, utterly destroyed without having to go through Congress, because half of those departments don't have anybody in charge. So they're just kind of aimlessly, and they're being destroyed. The EPA, HUD, HHS, you name it, all of them are being, my whatever assistance I get is being taken apart, not because the laws changed or even that they haven't, the money is there. They just have no one to administer it. So it goes into somebody's slush fund over here. And this is all, and Donald Trump is a distraction. So we don't see what's going on over there. It's your 3-card Monte. Where's the ace? Where's the ace? Where's the ace? So, well, if you haven't, Jamie, if you read any of my writings, I turn off my spell checker. Because spelling is a spell. When the Tower of Babylon exploded, and before then we were all telepathic and we never lied, cheated, or stole because we could read each other's minds. The Tower of Babylon blew that away, and we all became these different races. Mindlessly going off into different places, and then having a culture and a language that we had to, divine, and that's the problem. And so we're again at this roof, this ceiling, and we have to break through that barrier to escape the illusion of the material world. And what are the 3 pillars of that illusion of the material world is violence, greed, and apathy, So I came here, to get worked on medically, and I have one more little procedure to go. And that's, and I'll probably be, up for being back to the deep green in a week or 2. But I also came here because there are a number of people I've been, trying to get to run for office. Now, a couple of them are. And they basically want me to, we need to put us in, no. If you want to be a politician, you got to do this. So they're not really doing it. you know. And I've tried to get other people who could help them. There are a number of people I know who are really brilliant, who are like what are known as political operatives. I mean, they work in politics. They are this guy's you know uh, running their campaign, and they know everything. They got the statistics, got everything. They know how to raise money, and I try to get them to work with those people, and they just kind of want like you know don't do it. Can you give me that phone number again? I text it to them so they got it in their phone. I put them together so they can talk. Nothing happens. And there are all these different groups, and I've been going to them all and say, "Come on, let's get behind these people. They would represent you in the state capitol." Not going to happen. So, and that's that apathy. It's also that greed. Meaning, all those different groups that I've worked with and wrote them grants and helped them. Um, they understood that I could do that stuff. So they, oh well, we accept Al, because he does all this hard work for us, and like magic, it happens, and there it is, and wow. But I just do that to show them how to do it, hoping that they will do it themselves because that's the only way this is work. Their Sensei Al Bob can't just keep doing it for them. And that's the same thing with the cadre here. I keep knocking these live chats out because that's what I've been told to do, so I'm doing it. But I'm supposed to be. That's what your griot is tells you the story and is the example, and isn't the magician doing it for you. So. Uh, you know, I used to have a Jamie. Do you know what a Combi is? That was their kind of Volkswagen van. I had one in the '60s. No computers, no nothing. Had that same little, two-stroke motor, lawnmower engine in the back, but the cabin was great. And I had one that had a pop-up. I was like that was like the dude's vehicle because I could drive anywhere, anytime, and have my own little house with me on four wheels. And that was quite fun. And I had one in Europe when I was in Sweden, and I kept going down to Italy. I would drive Volvos down to Italy, and Germany, and drive back Mercedes and Fiats, which for some reason the Swedes liked better than their Volvos. And I was also bringing back and forth Combis, and I would make at least a couple grand, my expenses, and a couple grand for taking one vehicle. And if I got a Combi, I would stuff it with cheap crap that I would buy in Europe. Like in Sweden, the tax for TV was just ridiculous. I mean, if you had an antenna up there, they come on the door and say, give us $1,000 so you can watch TV. And I brought back lots of what are known as rabbit ears. You put the TV antenna on top of your TV in your house. No one can tell that you're watching TV. And the Swedes bought them up. I bought them for $1 a piece in Italy, and they were being made in Turkey. And I'd buy them for a couple of cases of them, $1 a piece, and I'd sell them for a couple $100 in Sweden because it saved them $1,000, right? Anyway. That was the good old days in the '60s and '70s. But I drove around in a Combi. That was my favorite vehicle. But Volvos were pretty good. Volvo had a little kind of station wagon that was like a little van kind of thing. That was not a bad vehicle. Hey, Fish. Good to see you. Miss Twitchy. Going back to your Gnocchi were the only guys who did any kind of research on the physical effect of the cell phones on human beings. And they said, looks like this is going to be bad. And then they were bought out by, Motorola. And nobody looked back since that. When this 5G thing goes on, ooh, baby. But we're already in a 5G swimming pool because if you got a router and a Wi-Fi in your house or your business, that's a 5G environment. Well, you know, the problem with when John says what he has to say is that he says the same thing over and over. And again, he is the perfect, that's why I call him the canary in the coal mine, is that he really represents that barrier in the human race being stuck, right? He has this laundry list of, how am I going to pay my bills, even though his folks pay all his bills and will till the day he dies, my children are the most important thing, but he won't. They were here for a year and a half. He could have spent every day with them. He didn't. And the year and a half that they were here, that I was involved around, kind of helping him out. The only time he went down to see him was when I took him down there. And it was 2 or 3 times in that year and a half. He could have been there every day, hanging with his boys. And every time we went there, his their mother, like, yeah, take them away. They're can't take it anymore. And he could have taken them up to the school. He brought them up there maybe once or twice, and he said, "Oh, it's not safe enough." I mean, they were in there, 10, 9. I mean, the kids are indestructible, And John's a great example of a guy who makes excuses for why he feels so miserable, and the only reason he feels miserable is that he blames everyone else. Like the other day when he did that thing, he went through, again, back and forth of how I was in cahoots, in collusion with his father, aliens, and the dogs. If that's what he has to say, well, that's cool. But I hear it 5 to 50 times a day. And when I go up to the deep green and then I'm out of phone range, I come back and I find that he texts me 70, 80 times a day while, not in communication. It's like, really? And he's probably watching this and he'll scream at me when we get home, as I talked about. But it's your fault, Jamie. You brought it up. No, I'm kidding. And I love John. He's my friend. To me, if he wasn't my friend, I didn't care about him. There are other places I could be, What was this? What are you talking about, Jamie, here? Glad to see. I got a smartphone, going back to my Nokia. Okay, Twitcher says, sounds fancy. Glad to see you, Sensei. Was worried, John. I have a 5150. A little scary. Yeah, well, and it's, again, John is this great simulator. I mean, I'm learning how to deal with, that in the most empathetic, positive, healing way. I'm getting my healing chops back. But John, scary fish, but John said what he had to say. Fair enough. Yes, he did. A little worrying for him and Al. Yep. His mother keeps bailing him out. He probably won't get a job. Right. And he's got a bachelor's degree from really prestigious colleges. He's gone to them all, right? He went to all amazing schools. Then he got his graduate degree in filmmaking. He could go teach anywhere. Meaning, I could get him a job teaching at high school here, but he doesn't want to do that. He's like, I can't do that. It's so uncomfortable. His most important thing is to be with his kids. Never goes there because he can't go to Texas because it's so uncomfortable. Meaning, if his kids and his family are the most important thing, you overlook that uncomfortable thing. I had a friend of mine who was a musician, right? And he would play around the country. And of course, he had lived up in Vermont and he was all over the country. And of course, all these girls were all over him. And so, of course, he fooled around and his wife got tired of it. And he took their kids. She didn't go to Texas. She went to France. And she was a, art historian. So she got herself a nice gig in a college town in France. And what did my friend do? Go, oh, I miss my friend. No, he went to Europe. Got himself an agent in Europe and got himself an RV, and he would play music in Europe. And then when he didn't have a gig for a week or two, he would park his car on the street right in front of their house. And he didn't go on her property, but he parked right in front of there. When the kids would come home from school, they would come into his RV, he'd have them a little sandwich, they hang out, they play checkers and chess and read books. And he went to the police and said, listen, Here's all my documentation. This is what I'm doing. I found that I can park this vehicle by law right there, not a problem. And they said, yep, you can. It's very nice that you came and told us. Not a problem. Because you want to see your kids? Hey, this is all good. And so when the first time he did that, you called up the cops. Cops said, no. He's in his total rights. He's not coming on your property, and your kids are, he showed us that he has legal right to see the kids half the year. And, to us, he's being responsible parents, So after about a year, they didn't come back together, but okay. You've shown your commitment to your children, and you weren't mean to me, and you were just being a putz musician out there. Okay, we're never going to get back together, but we can be at peace for the goodwill of our kids. Now, 30 years later, his kids are grown up. Him and his wife aren't together, but they are friends, right? Now, if John were to go to Texas and do the same kind of thing, instead of going, oh, it's so uncomfortable, he stays there 2 or 3 days and runs back here, right? So he could get a job. Plus, I've suggested, because he's got all this creativity in his skull, that he could be a voiceover guy. I was, years ago, when I first was in Asheville, I stayed at a motel where transients were, just for a week in an interim period, until I found I found my rent-controlled apartment. And this young girl kind of squatted in this guy's, room. And I don't know where he went, but he went and left all his stuff there, and his cell phone, his laptop, and the phone rang, and this guy had been doing voiceovers, and the girl answered the phone and said, hi, and the guy, where's Bob? And she said, no, he's not around. And the guy goes, well, I need a voice. And do you think you could do a voice? And he says, I'm going to text you on Bob's laptop, and it was on. She didn't have to know the code. And it went, bing. And she said, oh, yeah, I can read this. And she did, right? And so she read it, and the guy says, where can I send you $400? And she said, well, I'm at this hotel, and why don't you send it to them? And she said, gave him the address and the phone number, and the guy called them up. And so she got to stay there in that room, $400 for $400 was like for a whole month. It was 1990 something. And so she got into the voice, a homeless woman, living in garbage bags, because she just had the chutzpah to say, sure, I'll try this out. She got a whole career. She made enough money to buy a house in Asheville. She had John could easily do that. He's Mr. Internet. And we have, at the school, we have the most amazing, we have better internet than, than Verizon has at their home office. I mean, we really have an amazing thing there. And it's for free. The guy who rented the basement set it all up, and he didn't take it out. He left it there for John. John used to have to spend almost $200 to have his little cell phone be his little spot that he could work his laptop off. And now he has, bandwidth bigger than, the Defense Department. And, he could do anything from the school. He wouldn't even have to go down. And he could make it, somewhere between $500 and $1,500 a week. Because that's what this homeless woman made within a few months, so. And that's going back to this barrier, that I'm looking at, Yeah, his dad, came from a really poor little Irish family, so poor that they sent him to America, and had a authoritarian working class Irish, father. It wasn't his biological dad, but he was, his father is like 10 years older than I am, or give or take, maybe 5. And he did what was expected. He went to Vietnam. He didn't, he probably would have loved to be what John wants to be, right? And that's probably why John, wants to be it. But you have to live for something more than your own, violence, greed, and apathy. And that's what people are stuck in. You have to live for something greater than yourself. And a lot of people who do that go into environments like the military and then get just chewed up. Like my friend who started this thing off, Rev, he did that because he wanted to do something greater than himself, more for his community, right? And so, let's see. So it's, yeah, did that, done that, crawled out of the mire, right? Boop, 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 boop. Boop, boop, boop. Yeah, right. So, and John's my friend, and so he's between a hard rock and rock place because he's this Libra. The worst, astrological things. That's Libras are like this. If they can be balanced, they're really great. But when they're doing this, ooh-wee. And that's what John has been doing pretty much his whole life. Bing, 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 right? And basically blaming, because he feels so guilty, he has to blame everyone else. And that, why I'll let him take the reins of my live chats is because he is the canary in the coal mine. He really represents, I couldn't explain it any better than he acts it out. And that kind of acting out is what makes him a pretty good actor, writer, all the rest. But he doesn't do any of that. He could be doing that great, but he doesn't do it. He went to school. He was in California, but he ran away from it and used his ex as the excuse. There are plenty of friends of mine who went and did their dream, and they still were married, had kids, and took care of them. Yeah, that's lovely to hear, dear one. Don't you know she loved? This is a huge boost to a life. Sounds like a wonderful man. Certainly devoted to you. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. And most, it's biologically ingrained into the human species of the parent to want the best for their child, unless they're broken. Unless they got some sociopathic thing. But man, I was a social worker in New York for the New York City Housing Authority, and I saw some, parents treating their kids, using them as an ashtray, having them have their whole life. It wasn't just Harry Potter who lived in the closet. A lot of kids did. Never saw the light. I remember taking some kids out of a closet. There were 3 or 4 little guys, and we got the firemen and the EMTs and the cops. We got them out of there, and I was a social worker, and they all looked like they were 4, and there was about 4 of them, and the youngest was 6, and the oldest was 12, and they were still wearing diapers, and it was like. It was like, and they were like this. They couldn't look at the light. We found kids who were chained to radiators. So when the people went off to work, they left their kids chained to the radiators, and the kids would get burned because they were like that far from the radiator. So John's parents aren't like that. In the last 2.5 years. I've been around their parents, 6, 9 times, maybe all told 18 hours in 2.5 years. I've only been driving John to see them, right? And being there. I never saw them really any other time, It's not like we hang out. It's not like I'm part of their clique. It's not like we get together in an undisclosed location and build we got to get John, Right. I've been a godfather. I have 127 godchildren because when I was in New York, there were a lot of kids in the 80s who were on the street. And I said, whoa, where are you going to go with that gun? Give me that gun. And, I give him a place to live. I put him, teach him to be an electrician. And virtually every single one of those kids turned out great. But they've probably been dead if I didn't take the effort to go, whoa, 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 come over here. Right? And that's what we should be doing instead of people like harassing children at, Planned Parenthood. Um, churches should be adopting babies rather than, traumatizing kids who, you know. And when I went to seventh, eighth grade, we were really taught about sex. So, none of us got pregnant, you know, and that's true. I mean, guys get pregnant too because they are the fathers of the children. But. Yeah, life is an opportunity. It's not a responsibility. It's not a catastrophe. It's not a drudge. It's not, any of the above. It's a great blessing we're put on this earth. And if we, you know, take up that and co-create with love, then we can ascend our conscious free will to that next level. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck under this boundary layer of violence, greed, and apathy. Yeah, we all have our issues, So here we are, 41 minutes, 9 seconds. So, what else is shaking, gang? Bu- 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 Animals are all our relations, and we treat them like property, you know. And I grew up in a city, so I didn't have animals around me. But once I kind of got out of that, and I was out, when I went to New Mexico, I learned about dogs and horses, and I became a dog boy and a horse boy, right? And I wasn't really about riding horses. My whole thing was communicating with horses. The thing I liked best was making a horse feel safe. The thing I did mostly with horses was brush them down and clean out their stall. And when I went to, the Catholic school to become a priest, one of the punishments was to take care of the animals. They had a farm, so we took care of goats, chickens, and cows. I mean, they had a dairy. And I really liked cows because cows were like big dogs. They have the same kind of emotional structure as a cow. I mean, dog. They just don't know how to be like part of. They're not pack animals, but they love you. If you're the person taking care of them, they love you unconditionally. It's really, truly amazing. So I really like cows. So that's kind of why I stopped eating them. And chickens, it's hard to relate to a chicken. Um, you know, but we treat them so poorly. Um, so I'm not quite the chicken guy yet, but birds, I love birds. And birds are different. Free birds flying around are way different than chickens in the coop. And ducks, I relate to a little bit better because they're kind of free range. They fly around, they swim. Um, uh, yeah, like I said, the thing I enjoyed most was cleaning out their stalls because they so much appreciated it, especially if I did it with a good heart. And I always had a carrot or an apple in my pocket. Whatever they liked, I would bring with me and share with them. And brushing them down. The cows were like, no one's ever brushed me down. Now horses get it because it makes them look nice, and people like their horse looking nice. But you know, Yeah, we're all, that's the best part of humanity, Jamie, is empathy. And empathy is the closest thing um, we humans, underneath this barrier of violence, greed, and apathy. Empathy is the only, ESP thing we got going. After the explosion of the Tower of Babel. Yeah, yep, yep. Yeah. So what shit? My dad. He had this thing wrong with him. He had this aplastic anemia thing going on, which I have too, but not like he had. As I once I really got sick, I like, lost all this weight, changed my lifestyle, changed my body chemistry because I understood about it. So, and my dad did. I cooked for him, so they lived. I expect. When I started taking care of my parents, I thought they'd die in 5-6 years. They lived another 28 because they changed their diet, changed their everything, changed their. Basically they hung out with me all the time, and I basically said, I'm not going to be with you unless you're your better self. And then they started being their better self, right? So, um, but my dad had this thing where he just uncontrollably crapped himself all the time. He didn't care, and he wouldn't wear Depends and he wouldn't do any of that stuff. He wore baggy shorts so he could, let it go and just like shake it off his leg. And like all of the like Walmart's, within a 100-mile radius of his place, he couldn't go in Walmart to like put his face with a line through it. Don't let this guy in, because he would just crap, leaving poop not poop, but a milkshake everywhere. It was like pretty, and he would do it all over the house, which was whoa. And expected me to clean that stuff up. And I found a Hispanic woman who was anal retentive. She loved cleaning that stuff up. She was like an angel. The last 4 years of my parents' life, I found people that I couldn't take care of them because I was starting to get pretty sick. And I weighed almost 500 pounds, so I couldn't like lift them and move them. And so I found some pretty amazing people. There was this woman, her name was Timothy, and her father had all girls, and he wanted a boy, so the last one he named Timothy, so he could at least have one kid with a male name, and she lived with it. And my dad, this was right in '08 when the big crash happened, and he was having to have, people from, a company for $16 an hour take care of him and mom, the court said you got to do it. And he's spending like $3,000 a week on these people. All they did was sit and read magazines and chew gum and wear a white uniform and white shoes, do nothing. And he kept saying, and I was in the middle of working for a desperate lawyer, and he said, you gotta come. And I said, Dad, you want to give me $12,000? I'll come. But I'm in the middle of a thing. As soon as I'm done with this, I'll come. So the minute I showed up, he fired those girls, and within 6 hours, the police they're going to arrest me for parental abuse because these girls said that once I showed up, they got fired. And anyway, long story short, the person from my company who was a psychologist who was psycho herself was there with a police, county policeman, and he was there, and this was his bailiwick. We kind of watched it. And so my dad was a total asshole and stressed out. And my mom, and they lived in a really beautiful house in a really beautiful gated community. Everything was really beautiful, and there was no, terribleness. And, the cop was here, and I said, hey, buddy, come here. I said, look at this. Here's a receipt from the last hotel I was at. You can see I was there for the last 2 weeks. And I just arrived 6 hours ago. And my father, yeah, I see it. Your father fired all those girls expecting you to take their job. I said, yeah, it's obvious. He looked at me being like, gigantic. He said, you need somebody to take care of you. You're not going to be able to take care of them. I said, I know that. I said, he said, no problem. Here's my card. I'm going to get this bitch out of here. And because my father and her were like going toe to toe and they're about to kill each other. And he said, you get some people in here. Not a problem. I trust you. Your dad, he's an asshole. but I trust you. So good. Nice meeting you. And that guy and I became somewhat friends. We'd see each other at this place where the cops would eat. And they had really great blueberry pancakes. And every time I wanted to escape my family, I'd go have breakfast there, just like I come here. So I did that. We put an ad in the paper, and my dad, we interviewed about 60 people, and they all had gotten fired because it was economic crash. So all these people needed a job. And my father offered them like $1.50 an hour. When they were getting sick, they were registered nurses, and they were getting 16, 20 bucks an hour. And he would put them through really terrible. So what do you do? What religion are you? Did you ever have to do that? Really stuff you shouldn't be asking them. And they would, once he said, okay, you got the job, but you only get paid $1.50. I mean, $150? No, $1.50 an hour, And they would get irate and scream and yell. And out of all of those, we found 4 people who actually said, okay, because they met my mom and spent more time with my mom, in that interview than with my dad, and realized they really liked my mom and they wanted to take care of her. And, they already were kind of retired, had money in the bank. Yes, they would like to get paid what they should, but they saw the need here and they were going to do it. Very similar to me. John keeps saying, you need to get a job, like, being a garbage man or something. But I have a job. Talking to you guys, getting people to run for political office, going into things like Goodwill and social, and getting people to work together, talking to, connected people and making them be empathetic human beings. That's my job. Yeah, sometimes they give me a little money, buy me lunch, put some gas in my car, give me shoes, but it's not important. It's not like I don't get a paycheck every week. And, sometimes it is. A couple of those people I have worked for an extended period of time to get their boat in the right direction. So, that's what I do, and that's what I was put here to do, not to work for desperate lawyers, right? So anyway, so Timothy was this black woman who was unbelievably sweet and had been doing it for 30 years and was a nurse. She was like on top of it. And my mom loved her and she was ready. And my mom switched her time thing. She slept during the day and, was up all night, which was driving my dad crazy. So we put my dad in a separate bedroom and moved my mom's card table and her lazy boy into the master bedroom. And that was like her little apartment, right? And late at night, that woman, Timothy, and my mom would go to the kitchen and make cookies. And because my mom liked to bake. And then they would play gin all night long. And then as the sun rose, they would watch the sun, rise over the ocean. And then my mom would go to bed. And then the next one would come in. And she would more or less take care of my dad and the house and clean things up. And keep an eye on my mom. And she was also an RN. And she was like, in her 60s. She was also retired, had money, not to worry. And then there was a girl in the afternoon. And then around dinner time, Timothy come in, because Timothy was a great cook. So when I said, Dad, and then I met this Mexican woman who I said, we need someone to clean up my dad. And, she goes, what do you mean clean up your dad? I said, go into that bathroom and there's a bucket, one of those shit buckets with a lid on it. And so she went in there. She said, no problem. I have no problem with this. You could see she was excited to do it. So that was our 4th staff, right? And between the 4 of them, we paid them each about $200, a little less, a little more. Timothy got more. She spent more time. But each of those girls got between $150 and $250 a week, which my parents could easily afford. The $16,000 a week, not so easy. So my dad, I said, so this one, oh, I like that one. I like that one. Oh, and this girl's going, oh, that's good. That's amazing. And then I said, now this woman this is the linchpin woman, Timothy, but she's got a boy's name. But is she one of those people? I said, no, Dad, no. I mean, did you hear her story? I mean, she's almost as old as me, and she, her dad wanted a son, and that was the closest, right? Yeah, but those black people, they smell. I said, no, black people do not smell funny. And he goes, I said, she's right out there. So let her cook us dinner. Because my father, he wouldn't let me cook. Oh, you can't cook. I'm a great chef. You can't cook. And My father would cook, and he would burn everything because he didn't do grandma's rule. You got to pay attention. So she made a rump roast potatoes and three different things and fresh baked bread and went and bought a good bottle of wine and put flowers on the table. And my dad was like, "Wow, this is really good. Amazing. Okay, you're hired." Right. Then he got to know her and liked her a lot, and saw what she did for my mother and he liked that even better. Right. So for about 5, 6 months, everything was going great. My mom was getting better and better and better. But from my experience, I know they have this thing before someone dies, they like almost die, and then they come back and kind of go up, and then die. So those last 6 months were the best. My parents were married almost 78 years. And they argued they screamed at each other almost every day. And last 6 months was the most blissful time and happiness they had. And my mom died. And then my dad died. And that's how it goes. But I was lucky to be part of that whole thing and help assist and facilitate my parents' ability to get past that boundary of, violence, greed, and apathy. And that's what we all need to do for each other, for all our relations. Usually if they've been together, when one dies, the other dies pretty quick. And my dad had this thing that because he was rich, you're hearing about how young people are making older people. My dad had that, in the early O's, he would go once a month and they took all his blood out and they would put a young person's blood into him. And he was good to go for a whole month. Everything worked really great. And then it started to, what would happen is he start creating a milkshake, and without any control, like he would do it in his pants, watching TV, and then we'd have to get rid of the couch, So after my mom died, we went back to Florida after putting her in the urn and then in the ground in Long Island. I found my dad with his service watch. He was, "Do you think God would be mad at me if I killed myself?" I said, "Listen, God couldn't give a fuck about you, Dad. Bottom line, I would be upset because I'd have to clean this up. It's worse than your chocolate milkshake. No, give me that gun." I took it apart, put the pieces in different places, threw it, so he couldn't do that. And I said, "Listen, Dad, all you got to do is, this is what you need to do. You need to go back to New Jersey to Mary's house." And he made my sister and all her kids and all her grandchildren traumatized because my dad would come in, be really nice, and then be really mean, really nice and really mean. And "Don't worry about it. I'm a millionaire. You'll be a millionaire too." And then he spent all his money, right? So nobody really got any of it. So, but I knew all this. So I wasn't expecting any of this, right? And I was doing what I was doing because I wanted to, after my parents died, not have any issues, right? I'd worked through I wrote and gave these 20-page things to my father. My dad would actually read them, and my mom would, and correct my spelling. And that's kind of how I built up my interesting writing style. And so the bottom line is that we need to be able to get past that barrier of violence, greed, and apathy. And John is a great canary in the coal mine, great example. So is Donald Trump. They both are example of people stuck doing the same laundry list over and over and over and over again, and rather than trying to ascend to the better self. Instead of being the good Daffy Duck, they are the evil devil Daffy Duck, right? And it's not because they're evil and devilish. It's because they're stuck there, right? Yep, service. That's what I'm trying to help. Being your griot sensei is to give you examples of service to love's co-creation, being in that state. Yep, spared mental dysfunction and pain. And that's kind of what my parents were in for about 80 years, because of what they experienced earlier in their life, and they just couldn't get past that barrier. My dad was Italian at the turn of the century, in 1900. He was born in 1910, 1909. So being Italian was worse than being a Muslim and a Mexican together, right? I mean, America has always been, what we're experiencing today is anything new. This is what America has been since Christopher Columbus showed up here. This is the karmic dynamic of this country. Any of you guys go visit, spend some time, do some service in, Indian reservation. Go be a teacher, and I did. I worked for Vista. And how I got into Fort Hamilton is that they sent me off to places like that were real shitholes. And I tried to make them better. And they said, oh, we can't have this guy. He's a rabble rouser, I was down in South Carolina working with sharecropper kids, and then went to, Indian reservations. And, and they said, no. And that's how I ended up in Fort Hamilton, Let's see. See, I had nobody to take turns. My sisters used to call, are they dead yet? Because they were looking forward to get my mom's jewelry, which she threw away. She would wrap things up in toilet paper, throw it away. And my dad bought her a ton of bling over the years, and she threw most of it away. Actually, my dad would throw it away because he's triple Virgo. My mom would wrap it up in toilet paper and leave it on the table. And instead of my dad going, what's in here? He would just throw it in the garbage pail. It's like, yeah, my mom had me when she was 45. 2 of them died, and I had 2 sisters and a brother, and 2 of them died, and me. And they were Catholic. That's why they had so many kids. And my mom smoked like a chimney and drank like a fish until she was triple Capricorn. She could do anything. And once she realized that, oops, this ain't good for the family, she stopped. I mean, she stopped smoking cigarettes like bing. She stopped smoking alcohol like bing. She didn't even have any real, she was a little bitchy for a week or 2, but she was always a little bitchy. And so, but she had amazing willpower. I learned willpower from my mom, but I come from it the other side. Rather than trying to kill, I try to do it with love, And the other thing about willpower is don't get habituated to start with. Be aware, be awake of who and what you are and where you're at. So you don't have to Jones, kicking, So anyway, what's the weather like? Well, everything's kind of dry. It looks like it's not going to rain. So we've been at it for an hour and 3 minutes. Come on, there's 4 of you there, and there's not any thumbs up. Come on, we need to get more subscribers. I got to have more. Not because I want it. So YouTube will put it out there a little bit more than it is, right? And again, I keep telling you guys, you better, I've seen a number of pretty good YouTube channels that weren't really, there was this, Eleanor something or other, who was the alleged illegitimate child of the King of England. And she had some pretty good understanding of the occult and the esoteric, and she wasn't mean or cool or screaming or yelling or had any real agenda. She was just kind of an old crazy lady. And she wasn't too old and she wasn't too crazy, But one day, her channel was gone. Now, if you go on my playlist, guys, there's a lot of interesting stuff on it that you can play. And one of them is her, but all her shows are taken off. But on my playlist, the only thing that still shows her were the things that came from other guys' channels. I mean, they interviewed her. So I have about 5 or 6 of her interviews in other channels because I haven't taken those channels down. Yeah, Emily Windsor Craig, that's the one. Vanished. I mean, what happened with that, Jamie? What happened with that? It was like freaking amazing that she just. I mean, I didn't see her as any kind of threat to anything. You know, it was like really. Oh, she started a new channel. Oh, Fish, if you could send that to my the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail, I would truly love it, because if you send me a link, I can go straight to it. If you just send me the address, I can't even see my keyboard to tap it in. Meaning I have 2 novels and I haven't been able to, see well enough, even with 2 pairs of glasses, to drop them on my XRATTED blog spot. I'm going to have to go to somebody in the library. There's 2 computer scientists, library science people who can help me do that, and I'll do that. I want to drop, I haven't edited these things, and I'm still writing, Black Widow Hot Pants, but I pretty much did 90-something% of cover page. I have about 280 pages, 300 pages of the cover page. And so and that might turn into a multiple novel, because I've really just described the characters and where they came from and the issues they're having and how they're interconnected through time and space. And I haven't really gone into the full bore, arc of the whole thing. I'm like up here. So I've done about 290 pages, and I'm up here in the arc of the story. I still have, probably 2 more books, but I haven't dropped that, and I haven't really edited it either. And I mean, I've edited it in my own kind of writing editing style, but not really. Meaning everything on XRATTED actually kind of needs an editor. I mean, yes, my stuff is kind of like art, but it's not like, something that could be sellable. I mean, I have friends who work in publishing, and they say, I love this stuff, but buddy, no one's going to pay for this, I said, well, good, you work in this industry. Here's a thumb drive. Go take it to, somebody who, you're alleged editor, meaning what they are people who take a book and help it come to. And they said, Al, your stuff is so far out of the parameter that your stuff, you'll be planetary famous, maybe 100 years after you're dead, like James Joyce. And I said, well, it'd be nice, if somebody. So somebody got the blog spot for me, and they actually helped me hang those on. They took a bunch of those things and just hung them up there. So I've got about another 9 novels I could stick up there, but I haven't been able to do it. She started a new channel. I think she got fed up. Computer problems. YouTube took her down. What's it called? Hang on. My favorite channels have been censored in the last 2 months. Yep. Like I said, Fish, if you could send me the link so I can just go straight to it, to my the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. I really super love it if you did that for me. And anybody wants to talk to me, I'm a QT. Get a hold of me at the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. Okay. Oh, I'll try and find that. SHECHAI. I can, normally find things using my phone because I can just hit the little microphone and talk into it. But now that I don't have any teeth, certain vowel consonant combinations don't go together too well. Yep. Many camels. Thank you, Jamie. Oh, I'm great for it. Again, if they're in America where I can just call them, have them get a hold of me at the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. Yeah, I'm down with calling anybody. And that's the easiest way of doing it, to keep a certain level of privacy, right? So have them get a hold of me at my Gmail, the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail, and leave their phone number. I'll call them just like I did you, Twitchy, and that'll be good, right? Well, Fish, don't worry about it. You gave the name there, and like I said, I'll try and use my phone to find her. So, and anybody else who finds her and can go onto my Gmail, the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail, and just put a link there. Okay, so here it is, 12:30. I think it's time for me to head on to the library. Okay, and I'll get a hold of you guys. If not there, then tomorrow, about the same time, about 12-ish, 1-ish, whenever I went on. How long am I? Oh, look at this. 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 11 seconds. I love it when a plan comes together. Yeah, don't put it on the chat. Just go to my Gmail, the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. Okay. Yep. Be well, gang. Love you guys. Okie dokie. Here I go.
Really, that teacher was really working with them, man.